All right, I guess it's time, so let's get started. Just something here. There we go. All right, hello and welcome everyone in this room, and then the folks joining virtually, thanks so much for joining. Today I will be talking about coaching through performance challenges. And my name is Rocio Werner. I'm a UX research manager at US Bank. My team is responsible for learning more about small business owners, so business segment, think about experiences, anywhere from shopping around our website for financial products and services, to small business owners applying for business checking accounts, credit cards, loans, you get the idea, and all the way to using our online banking experience. And that being said, to the right of my slide here, you can see some things that make me human and the people leader that I am today. All these activities have taught me a bit about coaching from different perspectives. My daily work, for example, it combines that career cultivation and research, two of my loves when it comes to work and career, as well as for fun. I'm an okay dancer and skater. True story, I can be clumsy just walking on a day-to-day basis. A past fractured ankle and sprains are testaments to that. So put me in a dance studio, a roller skating rink, and I'm pretty safe there. What I also enjoy and learn from these activities, in all seriousness though, besides not getting hurt, is that these two activities involve connection through coaching that happens, right? Setting those goals and getting some guidance on reaching those goals. As for the gardening, I'm still trying to figure that out. So one approach I've taken is to set realistic goals. So I'm making a little bit of progress, I should say. I'm sticking to succulents. So far, that's been trending a lot better for me. All right. So, speaking of coaching through connection and goals, during our time together, I'd like to introduce the Grow and Star models as a coaching framework. And then I'll sprinkle in some examples of how I've approached this, implemented this. And then with that, I'll summarize some lessons learned that you can take away with you after this conference. So to get to know you real quick, before I introduce the model, raise your hand if you've been either on a research or design team. And people in the virtual space, great, a lot of people in the room. How about product or some sort of adjacent field? Okay, great. Yeah, people in the virtual room, just chat amongst yourselves, interact about that, great. Now, raise your hand if you're a people leader, manager, some sort of role, or even mentoring. I mean, it's all part of it. Okay, quite a few. Great. Well, thank you for letting me get to know you a little bit here. Now, while this talk is geared toward people leaders, it's also good for senior leadership, to foster that culture and how to coach and continue to foster that connection and getting value, right, with engagement. However, this talk is also good for individual contributors, right, because you'll see it'll prompt some ideas on how to have those conversations with your manager, your people leaders. All right, so couple of questions I'd like you to keep in mind while you're listening to this talk, watching this presentation, as we're exploring the framework. I want you to, first of all, recall a time, a recent coaching experience, whether you were receiving the coaching or you yourself were giving out the coaching. Think about what was challenging about it. Or maybe it was a situation where it worked out really well. Think about those aspects that worked out really well. And as we're going through this presentation, think about what would you change? What would you have done differently? under this framework we're about to explore, and any existing challenges you're facing where this might help you out. Okay? And then during the Q&A, I'd love to get more discussion going on that. All right, with that, let's get going. Think about a great manager you've had. What stood out to you about them? Yes. All right, honesty. Yes, I like that. Okay, so that curiosity, that's seeking to learn. Okay, one more, yes. Yes, so treating you like an adult, a human being, to do the work that you're set out to do. Very good, very good. All great points here that we'll get into. So yeah, all that being said, a great manager's ability to connect is what impacts employee engagement. So here you can see a figure from the Gallup survey. Really 70% of the variance in employee engagement is due to the managers that they're dealing with, right? So the ability to connect with the employees really impacts this. And you all gave some really good examples of what that could look like. All right, so to make team members feel connected, here are a few foundational principles as we go through the framework later. All right, so first of all, it's a partnership, right? You and your team members are in this together. It's not a one-way situation, right? I often tell and remind my team members, I'm here for you. And also, you're here to put in the work. Like you take ownership of your career as much as I'm responsible to help you grow. The second point is, as a coach, that means that you're not here to dictate what they should do. It's more of a matter of creating that open dialogue, right? And that means asking questions to seek to understand and to guide. We're often taught this, in the UX field, whether you're a researcher, designer, that takes various forms. But the whole point is asking questions to explore more, not just jumping to assumptions. Well, that's a similar principle we see in coaching. Okay? And don't worry, you'll come away with a goodie bag of lots of good questions by the end of this talk. All right, and then to keep the communication going, of course, that means you should be meeting regularly, and that just creates and continues to create that open dialogue. And then last but not least, the growth cannot happen without action, so committing to action together is another important principle here. Okay, so staying on the theme of connection and growth, through the coaching, here's the GROW model. It basically enables leaders to develop coaching relationships. And big disclaimer here, I did not invent this. Okay, this was done by Sir John Whitmore and a couple of his colleagues, and you'll get the presentation slides at the end or after the conference. So you'll have this, but you'll have the footnote as well. If you want to explore this model further, there's a book reference there. All right. So GROW stands for goal, and then that's followed by reality, what is actually happening in the situation. Then options, right, to meet those goals based on the situation. And then lastly, will, or sometimes called the way forward. So what action will the person be committing to, the team member, based on the goals? Okay, whoopsies. There we go. I got a little happy with the slides. There we go. All right. So starting with goals. It's a matter of starting the conversation with questions on the goals. It's not just what they want to do, but it's setting the tone for open partnership as well as this sense of accountability, right? To start to explore what they actually want to accomplish. So here are a few questions. What are you looking to do? Why do you want to achieve this? When? And what does success look like to you? All right, let's try it out. So what I did is I am going to interweave some scenarios, just a couple of them, very simple ones. I know we humans are very complex, but for the sake of this, keep it simple. All right, so the first one is this high-performing and bored team member, to be frank. They're consistently a high performer. They expressed how redundant their last couple of projects felt, right? How would you begin to address this? And quite frankly, sometimes it's tempting to just go right into the fixing stage, right? I want to fix this with them. I want to help them out, right? I think that's a great attitude, but I think you need to take a step back, like put on the UXer's hat. Let's do some discovery here. All right. So in this case, what I recommend, first of all, acknowledging what they conveyed to me as the coach, right? Thanks for being open with me. I understand the last two projects have felt redundant. And then from there, going to the goal questions. For example, what are you looking to do? And then they tell you, well, I want more complex projects. Okay, what does that look like? Tell me more. Generative research, right? They're getting tired of doing all this usability testing all the time. And so that begins to look at the root cause. That sense of boredom is that they're perceiving that they're not working on complex projects because they're not getting into the discovery, generative research. And really their motivation is centered around trying out several research methods where those questions really fit the method. All right. So then from there, we start to explore the goal questions that provide that sense of ownership and accountability of creating that goal. So how do you know that you have successfully embarked on a complex project? And then when are you looking to do this? All right, here's another scenario. And this is, so we got the high performing and bored, and here's, all right, now we got someone who's starting to struggle. They're trending in that they're late on project milestones, meeting those. And they're already on a complex product initiative here. So with this is becoming a pattern, and how would we begin to address this, right? So before jumping into conclusions or trying to fix things, let's again acknowledge that there is a performance observation in hand. So this could be you as the coach instead of them approaching you, like, hey, let's talk. I understand this research is starting to take longer than we had planned. And just try to get an understanding from their perspective, what is their goal? Like, what are they looking to do here? So yeah, they're trying to address these research perspectives. They're trying to accomplish this work, but the stakeholders now want additional objectives after they thought they'd have aligned on them, right? So we're starting to get into the root cause here. It's not just that they're just taking their sweet time, just for the sake of it. Like, they really are struggling on stakeholder management here. So with that, continue to explore, okay, how do they want to achieve this, or more or less, why do they want to achieve these objectives, right? And then from there, when are they looking to do this? Obviously, they have a timeline to work with in the project. And then, how will you know that you've successfully aligned? So not getting surprise scope creep later on, right? Okay, so we've gone through goals. Next up in the discovery process of this coaching is reality. And this is asking questions about context gathering. This is to determine what is happening. So one that I commonly refer to is STAR, so it's the classic situation, task, action, results. This is a good guideline because it sets you up for, okay, getting context around what is happening, what's the situation here, what's going on. The task, okay, what are those expectations of what you're supposed to be getting done. And this puts it on them to, first of all, show that they're aware of what they're supposed to get done, but then also you being able to support them because you have an understanding of what they're trying to do or supposed to do. And then last but not least, action. How did you act or communicate in this? And then, of course, results, like what was the impact so far that was going on? And again, this is around seeking to understand and also continue to establish accountability. All right. Along with the reality of context gathering, there's also this idea of identifying the resources and obstacles related to the situation. So this is reflecting on the resources available or needed. The reason why I like to ask the team member, even though I might already know from experience or just dealing with similar situations, it's helpful to create that awareness and, again, that sense of ownership. Like, are they aware that there are these resources available? Are they making good use of them? Maybe they don't know how to use them, right? So that's why I find it very important to ask this. And resources could be anything from, established processes, best practices, templates, but it could also be the human side of things. Maybe things that fall outside your professional sense of scope as a manager, people leader, but you should still care, right, if it's impacting their work. So I'm talking about, maybe something personal situation that they're dealing with comes up, or a health issue, anywhere along those lines. So it's good to establish that rapport and show that you care, but then also know that there are resources that might fall outside your scope of coaching, but you can direct them or make them aware of things like the employee assistance program, or however that looks at your employers. All right, and of course, obstacles, right? That goes hand in hand with the resources. Okay, so back to our scenario, we got our high-performing and bored. So here, we already established what they're trying to accomplish, right? They're trying to get more involved with the complex projects. Okay, so now we're getting a sense of, okay, yes, the recent research needs have been around usability. The product team expressed that they could use some more research direction as they're thinking about the future roadmap. So this implies more strategy here. My responsibilities as the researcher have been evaluative in nature. I conducted usability testing based on the questions we had as a team. This resulted in, there's some good impact here. Short-term improvement, creating a backlog. So this person has been utilizing their processes and best practices that they've established here. There are some obstacles in kind of thinking through, okay, how can I recommend generative research? I need some help with that. So now we're getting at what they really need. So this illustrates why that initial discovery and coaching conversations is very important to have before taking the action. Okay, with that, we have another side of the sort of the coin, if you will. We have the person who's starting to show some performance trends, late meeting project milestones. So here we're starting to surface the situation around stakeholder management, right? So the reality here is that they've had these stakeholder scope meetings. Not everyone was able to attend. They created research objectives, and they distributed these plans based on that, and they started to proceed with the project, but there's no alignment, right? And so then we get scope creep with these other stakeholders who couldn't attend. So with this, the obstacle is, okay, how do I get to alignment when I can't have all the stakeholders together? And the resources, as I'm talking to this person about it, and this is all hypothetical. I keep employee matters confidential. But hypothetically, there's training on stakeholder management, for example. Maybe this person's not aware or is not utilizing them. So then we start to get to some information to help and support. Okay. So, through this discovery around goals and reality, it's time to explore these options, right? Here's where we start to brainstorm on achieving goals and removing obstacles. So, for example, what ideas can we brainstorm to achieve your goals? How can we remove these obstacles? And, everyone has a different format to document. Sometimes we just put it on a mural if it's a nice, complex, meaty problem to work through together, or it's just talking and then jotting notes, whatever works for you all. All right. In this first scenario, so we had discovered that they could use some guidance on approaching the generative research. So then, all right, what ideas can they brainstorm to achieve the goals? And so with this, one thing that could be is identifying knowns, unknowns, and assumptions about those user needs. And then what are some ways to remove obstacles? So you got to start somewhere. So brainstorm some generative questions. What have the product team, whether it's designers, product owners, business stakeholders, what are they looking to learn? And from there, you could start to formulate some questions here. Right, and here in the second scenario, again, brainstorming ideas. They could use some guidance around stakeholder management. So ideas to brainstorm, set expectations with these stakeholders on how to work with researcher in terms of in a scoping phase, let's all get together at this time, offer 2 meeting options, send the draft of the research plan around with a clear timeline to follow up on the alignment. And then it's go time from there. And then how can we remove some obstacles? So again, part of that is providing these different meeting options and creating these alignment opportunities that could be synchronous. Now we're starting to get more into the action. So after brainstorming some options, it's time to discuss, okay, what will they commit to doing? And when? That's a key word, when, having that timeline. And then, of course, showing support by asking, how can I help? And I will say this as a kind of a side note. Help does not mean you do their work for them. Help means, okay, you're stuck on something, let's talk about it. That's one example of helping. Okay, you have this goal, let's figure out how we can break this down. Okay, so here, supporting the team members, setting expectations through their commitment to action by establishing milestones and a feedback cadence, right? Because how are they going to know if they're performing up to the milestones that they set up to do? So having the overarching goal, and you'll see it in a minute in a template, but it's basically what are they doing to meet those goals and by when? And then, of course, getting feedback throughout, whether that's the regular one-on-ones, and then also important to note the ad hoc kind of real-time feedback after something happens so that it's fresh in the mind and they can see, okay, I see this is happening, all right, let's see how we can move forward. And of course, be direct, focusing on the behavior. And then lastly, to track the progress, it's important to document and discuss performance at each milestone. And again, remember STAR, situation, task, action. Sound familiar? And result, of course. So this is looking back at the reality. What is the reality check here? What is happening at each milestone? There we go. All right, so you can start to see it in practice in this template. Again, you'll have these slides after the conference, but you can see at the top, there's the goal, right? So for our high performer, they want to conduct generative research this quarter, so there's a goal with a time associated with that, and they want to provide strategic direction on the roadmap by doing this. So start to break it down, and part of that to work toward that goal is to conduct some secondary research by X date to identify those gaps. And then you get the idea. And then, of course, during the meetings, at the milestones. Star, what is the reality? What is happening? Have they met this milestone? And any other feedback you can provide them to learn. Okay, so here it's the same thing. Again, it's breaking down the goal. And in this case, it's deliver research in a timely manner by aligning on research objectives with stakeholders. And you can see one milestone to start to do that is to gather some input from all the stakeholders by X date. All right. So with that, implement, grow, and start. This allows you to build that coaching connection based on partnership, communication, as well as action. So here are some key takeaways. Create goals through conversation, right? You can't influence and coach and support through coaching in a vacuum. You gotta talk to your team member. And then determine the existing reality to gather any context using STAR, situation, task, action, result. Identify resources and obstacles. This creates not only, well, it helps to determine awareness of what these resources are, but then also determine, are they being utilized if they are aware of them. Brainstorm and remove those obstacles. And key is on brainstorming, right? Again, you're having the conversation, you're not fixing it for them. You're working together in a partnership of their career. And then last but not least, establish milestones and feedback cadence, right? So in order to determine whether or not they're progressing on this, it's important to talk about it and continue to track and document. All right, and these are all the questions that you'll see when you receive the slides. It's my little coaching grow question bank that you can begin to use, whether you're a people leader or if you're an individual contributor who wants to be inspired. Okay, well, how can I get this conversation going with my manager or coach? These are some prompts that you could use. And with that, I have plenty of time for questions, so love to hear from you. Thank you. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's joining us virtually, I don't know if they have any questions as well. I'd love to hear that. Oh, I see we got someone there. Yeah.
When you're in a coaching session and your mentee or your team member is having multiple problems that may not necessarily be, totally within their control of affecting, it is partially. How do you help them prioritize where to start?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Well, part of that is identifying, okay, what is in the span of their control, right? Sometimes it's as simple, well, not so simple, but how would they react to a situation? Like, that alone is in the span of their control, like, proceed from there. So what is happening where they feel it's something outside their control? And then just start to break it down. What is the reality of that? What are they looking to do in this situation? And then they can start, you and the person can start to identify where truly there is control or not control, whether that's reacting to or being proactive about something. Does that help? Great. Hi.
Hi. I'm curious how you would handle a situation. So if there was a team member that possibly saw something they were struggling with as a strength, but then you saw it differently and they really weren't aware that it was like it was something they needed to work on, but they thought it was a strength of theirs. Curious how you would approach a situation like that, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. So the question is around, it's really around perception, right? The team member feels that they have the strength, but in reality, what we're observing is perhaps it's something that is a growth opportunity that they could work on. So yes, that is something to tread delicately on. But in all honesty, be direct. I put on the researcher hat. What are we observing? What's this qualitative data? What are we observing that they're doing? And just be honest. Like, during this meeting, I observed X, Y, Z. And then focus on the behavior, not any emotions or anything like that. And then the impact. And this led to Y. And, here's an opportunity. What is your perception? Like, tell me more about that. What are you trying to accomplish? And then start to explore from there. Because that does open the dialogue. Sometimes, they're truly not aware, and they might be very appreciative about that. Or in some cases, they need a little more convincing, so you just keep bringing the patterns and keep having that open dialogue. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. You might have already specified this, but when you say meet regularly, is there an ideal time frame, like shortest to longest, kind of like once a month or like once a week, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, how often is meeting regularly? I recommend once a week. I've been in places where it was once a month or twice a month, but I truly, both as the person being coached and as the coach, I didn't feel like that was enough because, some time would go by and I would hear either as a coach or as the person being coached about something that I should have known sooner. And so weekly is a good cadence because there's less time that could pass by where something time sensitive that they need to know is surfaced on a weekly basis at least. Yep. Anyone else? Hi. Oh, for a research project or a goal?
For research project, what kind of milestones do you set so people can stay on track?
Okay, so the question is, yes, what kind of milestone, how many milestones for a research project to stay on track? It varies on the complexity, but I would say, 3 to 5 is pretty manageable, especially if you're working in an agile environment. That's pretty reasonable. Otherwise, you have to break it down further in multiple phases and goals. Yep.
Thank you.
Hi.
My question is, when you have like younger, more green employees, we've noticed sometimes when you set goals like that, that might not even be something that they know how to articulate yet. And I
Yeah.
wonder what experience you have or how to help them arrive at what even a good goal is for them. There's like a lot of self-exploration and experience that they need to gain. And when I've been helping mentor, sometimes that's like a tough thing to work past because it's hard to know what to give them to help them get to a place where they're not sure, where it's headed for themselves.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is around helping someone that maybe isn't as experienced, who's greener at what they're doing, helping them set goals when maybe they don't know quite how to do that, or maybe they don't have the full context in their role to do that. If it's day one or week 2 or whatnot, I think it's a matter of walking through the context with them and explaining to them, okay, these are the business goals, and then asking them questions about that, like what questions do you have for me about those business goals? And then, okay, here are the overarching goals across the team related to those business goals, and just start to really peel the onion, so to speak, of that discovery exploration with the person to see how they're thinking about goals, like where they're coming from. If they truly, after those initial questions, don't have a sense of what could be goals, what I like to do with newer people is, during the interview process for hiring them, I have a sense of some of their strengths that they bring. So then setting them up for success by dedicating them to, a project, like their starter project. And then from there, starting more tactical with those goals around the project. And then again, meeting regularly and figuring out where might be those roadblocks through the coaching conversations. And then from there, you start to create a bank of opportunities based on either those roadblocks or, hey, I want to explore the strength a little further through this project. Does that help? Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Anyone virtual yet? No? Okay. All right. Hi.
Hi. This might be similar to the strengths question that you answered earlier, but I guess, do you have any advice for, when a team member is delivering the work kind of as it should be, but it's more of the how that needs the coaching, like how they interact with other people to get it done and their attitude and that kind of thing?
Okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. Making sure, sorry, repeat it one more time.
Yeah, so I'm curious if you have advice around coaching for kind of that how that they get the work done, like how are they interacting with other people and being most effective and all of that. Like technically the work is checked off, but there's just a lot of things that they could do to be more effective. I don't know if you...
Got it. So more about the how and being more effective, even though they're checking off the boxes from a process perspective. So maybe one concrete example, let's say they're executing the projects on time, but they could use some polishing up on executive presence when sharing out. Is that that gets at that?
That's a good example.
Yeah, so again, I would say put on the researcher hat and bring to them what the reality is. Like, hey, this is what I've been observing. And again, talk about the impact. And from there, help them work through, okay, how might we do this and set those goals? Once you establish the reality around that, and then break that down.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, hi.
Sometimes, like talking to a manager, there might be more like general feedback or, okay, that project went very well. But if you are looking for like more specific feedback, instead of just like everything went well, how would you start that conversation?
Okay, so the question is, when you're getting vague, very general feedback from a manager, you want more specific feedback, how to prompt that and make that happen. Yes, so a couple of approaches is before, whether it's a project or a presentation, whatever it is that you want feedback on, before you complete that task or project and whatnot, give them a heads up, like, hey, I'm going to be doing this. If there is some context that you've had conversations before on something you're working on, you could say, hey, I'd like feedback. I know I've been working on, I don't know, let's throw something out, scope management, I don't know. I'd love your feedback on X thing for this project or presentation or whatever. So being proactive and giving them in advance what kind of feedback you're looking for. Now, ideally, manager, people leader, coach, whatever they're called these days, they should be also meeting you there in the middle and being proactive, but, we're complex beings, so we don't always get that. So again, being proactive, thinking ahead, letting them know what kind of feedback, and then if you do talk to them after you've completed whatever you set out to complete, leading with very specific questions, like if they say, yeah, you did a good job, you could start with, okay, I noticed maybe I did this, how can I improve that, or what did you think about this? So being as specific as possible. Does that help? Great. Hi.
Kind of like following up with what she has asked, 'cause I'm also an IC, and right now I'm like a principal level designer in my organization. I've been in the field for a while. One question that I keep having is like, how do you maybe adopt this model in an organization where it's not very clear in terms of career advancement. I believe a lot of middle-sized or smaller-sized companies, they probably don't have a clear evaluation of, oh, if you achieve XYZ, then that's your next level and that's your career trajectory. So I'm wondering, like as an IC, is there opportunities for us to adopt this model or maybe suggest this to the manager to kind of clarify our career growth path?
Yeah, that's a great question. So your question is around as an individual contributor where maybe this is an established practice, how to start having that interaction with people leaders, especially if you're projecting like, how can I move on to that next level? I think a good way to start is, again, this goes back to the reality of identifying resources. So a resource could be, okay, what are the skills? Do you have documentation of the skills I need to get to the next level? What does it take to get to that next level? And then having those honest conversations with your manager, okay, this is where I want to be by X time, based on this skills matrix or role description, whatever is out there documented. You could work together on those one-on-ones and have those honest conversations around, okay, where are there gaps, where are my strengths? And if there is not a really good documentation, if it's a small organization, come to alignment agreement on what moving to the next level is. So documenting for you with your manager, what requirements do I need to meet for that next level? What does that next level look like? And then proceeding with the similar conversation. Yep. How are we on time? I just want to be mindful. We're good, right? We're still good. A few minutes. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
You mentioned speaking to the behavior rather than to something else. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Oh, so especially in the feedback, right? Focusing on the behavior. Okay. I think concrete example will help. Because I'll admit it, a couple decades ago, I was an inexperienced manager, and it just wasn't a culture. It was a smaller place. So it wasn't a culture where I had that coaching, like coaching the coach. So I had to learn the hard way. So let me think about this. Instead of focusing on how something that the person you're coaching made you feel or made someone else feel, maybe that's not relevant, right? Oh, they got under my skin, or oh, they got under that stakeholder's skin. I mean, that's an extreme case, but I'm just showing contrast. Versus, okay, they didn't meet the deadline, or something along the lines of they didn't follow this process, so that puts X at risk by not following the step in the process. So does that portray the difference, more or less? So, yeah, it's a subtle nuance, but it makes a heck of a difference because you can't change the way someone is emotionally. You can't change how they feel about something necessarily, but you can help them change through action, like identifying that behavior, and then how do they move forward? Great question. Hi. Yeah.
Like after we have shared the research side, insights, and design, sometimes we feel like it's just been handed off to product, and we're not sure if we make any actual impact. How do you help people understand the business impact by implementing metrics after the research or design has been delivered?
Yeah, so question is around how to show the business impact from the research. Well, it goes back to goal setting, right? And what does success look like in this, in the designs? So starting that sooner than later, having an alignment on what that is, so that, okay, you do the research, you identify pain points, you have an idea, or if it's evaluative in nature, the research. All right, well, you already had that success metric established. Okay, just to simplify the example, this product is usable, or the time on task decrease, whatever that metric is. Then you can see the business impact of that, like you have higher customer acquisition, for example. You know, you met the goal of 80% of customers in this segment, decided to get this product or something along those lines. So just aligning early on the goal, what does that success look like? And then from there, connecting the dots between, okay, what the business was supposed to set out to do, and then did we succeed based on the research and such? Okay. Oop, I don't know if we're on time.
Talking about
Yeah.
the definition of success, I think it's also worthwhile sometimes to think of this definition of failure, so you know when to pull a plug on things.
Yeah.
But also it might help people to realize that they're still not succeeding because the definition of failure is still present.
Yes, that is a good point. Yeah, failure is just as important as success, and that reminds me of something that I tell, especially newcomers to my team. I like the idea of failing safely, trying something out, especially if it's low risk. If you fail, or even if it's high risk, I'm not going to let you drown here. There's a little room for failure and then learning from it. So, good point all around. Okay, well, I think we are at time, so I want to be mindful of whatever's coming up next. Thank you so much, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Rocio Werner, and we'll connect. Thanks for all the great questions.